The school bus left me. And for a few seconds, I just stood there, looking at the empty street, thinking, no way, this is not happening. You know that feeling when your stomach drops? That was me. I had stayed a little longer at school that day. I don't even remember exactly why. Maybe I was talking to someone. Maybe I was taking too long to pack my things. Maybe I just didn't pay attention to the time. But when I finally walked outside, the buses were gone. The parking lot looked almost empty. A few students were still around, but most people had already left. I looked to the left, nothing. I looked to the right, nothing. No bus, no ride. And I remember thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do now? At that time, I didn't have many options. My dad was working. He couldn't leave work to come get me. My mom's car was at the mechanic, so she couldn't come either. And I was too young to know exactly what to do, but old enough to understand one thing. I had to get home somehow. I called home first. My mom answered. Mom, I said, trying to stay calm. The bus left me. She was quiet for half a second. Then she said, what do you mean the bus left you? I missed it, I said. I came out and it was already gone. I could hear the worry in her voice. Oh no, she said. Your dad is at work and the car is still at the mechanic. I know, I said. Are you okay? She asked. Yeah, I'm okay, I said, even though I felt nervous. She said, stay there, let me think. But I looked around and saw few high school students walking down the sidewalk. They looked like they were walking in the same direction as my house. I said, Mom, I see some students walking. I think they're going my way. My mom quickly said, don't walk alone. Stay with people and call me if anything happens. And then she said something parents always say when they're worried. Be careful. I will, I said again. I hung up and took a deep breath. Then I started walking toward the group of students. At first, I didn't know what to say. I didn't really know them well. They were older than me, and I felt a little awkward. But one of the girls looked back and said, Hey, did you miss a bus too? I nodded and said, Yeah, it left me. She smiled a little and said, That's rough. And that phrase stayed in my mind. That's rough. It means something is difficult, stressful, or not good. For example, if someone says, I had to walk home in the rain, you can say, That's rough. It's a simple, natural phrase. So I said, yeah, it is. Another student, a boy with a backpack over one shoulder, said, where do you live? I told them the area, not the exact address, just the general direction. He said, oh, we're walking that way too. You can walk with us. And I remember feeling so relieved. I said, thanks. I appreciate it. That's another very useful phrase. I appreciate it. It means thank you, but it sounds a little warmer and a little more meaningful. So we started walking together. At first, nobody said much. We were just walking away from the school. And I kept looking back like maybe the bus would magically appear again. But of course it didn't. The girl walking next to me said, don't worry, it happens. I looked at her and said, really? She laughed and said, yeah, last year I missed the bus twice. I said, twice? She said, yeah, the first time I panicked. The second time, I just started walking. That made me laugh a little. Then she said, you'll be fine. We got you. That phrase is very American and very natural. We got you. It means we will help you, or you're not alone. If your friend is very nervous before a test, you can say, don't worry, I got you. If someone needs help carrying something, you can say, I got you. In this situation, they were telling me, you're safe with us. We're walking with you. And honestly, that made me feel better. As we walked, the sideway felt long. The sun was still out, but it was starting to go down slowly. Cars passed, and every time one sounded like a bus. I looked over my shoulder. One of the students noticed and said, still hoping the bus comes back? I laughed and said, maybe. He said, not gonna happen. And everyone laughed, not in a mean way, just in a funny, honest way. Then he said, at least you'll get your steps in. That phrase means you'll walk a lot. People say that when they walk more than expected. For example, if you park far away at the store, you can say, well, at least I'll get my steps in. It's a funny way to make a situation feel less bad. So I said, yeah, I guess so. After a few minutes, we got to a small intersection. The girl said, we need to cross here. I looked both ways, even though everyone else was already moving. She noticed and said, good, always look both ways. I said, my mom would say the same thing. She laughed and said, moms are always right. And honestly, that was true. We crossed the street carefully. and kept walking. Then one of the students asked me, "So, what grade are you in?" I told them. They said, "Oh, you're still new." I said, "Kind of." The girl said, "High school feels big at first, but you get used to it." That's another great phrase. You get used to it. It means something feels strange or difficult at first, but later it becomes normal. For example, English feels hard at first, but you get used to it. Driving in a new city is stressful, but you get used to it. Working with new people feels awkward, but you get used to it. So, when she said, "You get used to it," I understood she meant school would feel easier with time. I said, "I hope so." She said, "It will." We kept walking. After a while, my backpack started feeling heavy. I tried to move it higher on my shoulders, but it kept sliding down. One of the boys looked at me and said, "Your backpack looks heavy." I said, "It is." He laughed and said, "What do you have in there? Bricks?" I laughed too. "No," I said, "just books." He said, "Same thing." And that made everyone laugh again. Little by little, I stopped feeling scared. I still wanted to get home, of course. But now I wasn't alone, and the walk felt more like a small adventure. One of the girls asked, "Did your parents know?" I said, "Yeah, I called my mom. My dad is working, and my mom's car is at the mechanic." She said, "Oh, that's bad timing." That's another useful phrase, bad timing. It means something happens at the worst possible moment. For example, your phone dies right before an important call. Bad timing. It starts raining when you don't have an umbrella. Bad timing. You miss the bus when nobody can pick you up. Definitely bad timing. So I said, "Yeah, really bad timing." Then one of the students said, "Well, you're handling it pretty well." I said, "I don't feel like it." He said, "You're walking. You're not crying. That counts." And I smiled because he was right. Sometimes we think we have to feel brave to be brave. But sometimes being brave just means you keep going even when you feel nervous. That's something I learned that day. We walked past a few houses, a gas station, and a small store. I recognized the area more and more. I started feeling closer to home. I called my mom again. She answered fast. "Are you okay?" she said. "Yes," I said. "I'm walking with some students. We're getting closer." She said, "Okay, stay on the phone for a minute." So I stayed on the phone while we walked. She said, "Are you near the main road?" "Yes," I said. "Don't cross unless you're with a group." She said, "I know, Mom. Text me when you're close." "I will." When I hung up, one of the girls smiled and said, "Your mom sounds worried." I said, "She is." She said, "That's love." And I thought about that. Sometimes when parents worry, we feel annoyed. But later, we understand they worry because they care. After a little more walking, one of the students said, "This is where we turn." I looked at the street and realized my house was still a little farther, but not too far. The girl asked, "Are you okay from here?" I said, "Yeah, I know this area." She said, "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes, my house is close." She said, "Okay, be safe." I said, "Thank you. Seriously, I appreciate it." The boy said, "No problem. Don't miss the bus tomorrow." I laughed and said, "Trust me, I won't." They walked one way and I kept going toward my house. Now I was alone, but I felt calmer. I knew where I was. I knew I was close. A few minutes later, I saw my street. Then I saw my house, and I felt so much relief. I walked to the door, opened it, and my mom was waiting inside. She looked worried and relieved at the same time. She said, "Oh my goodness, you're home." I said, "I made it." She hugged me and said, "Don't do that again." I said, "I didn't do it on purpose." She said, "I know, but still." Then we both laughed a little. Later that day, when my dad came home from work, my mom told him what happened. He looked at me and said, "You walked all the way home?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "With other students?" "Yes," I said. He nodded and said, "Good. You did the right thing." And that made me feel proud because even though the day started with panic, it ended with a lesson. That day, I learned a few things. I learned that sometimes plans changed. I learned that it's okay to ask for help. I learned that staying calm helps you think better. And I learned that even a stressful moment can become a story you remember for years. Now, before we finish, I want to share some natural English phrases from this story that you can use in real life. First, the bus left me. The bus left me. You can say this when you miss the bus because it already left. For example, I got out late and the bus left me. Second, That's rough. That's rough. Use this when someone tells you something difficult or stressful. For example, I lost my phone yesterday. You can say, "Oh no, that's rough." Third, I appreciate it. Use this when you want to say thank you in a warmer way. For example, "Thanks for helping me. I appreciate it." Fourth, we got you. This means we will help you or you're not alone. For example, "Don't worry, we got you." Fifth, you get used to it. Use this when someone feels hard at first, but becomes normal with time. For example, English feels hard, but you can get used to it. Sixth, bad timing. Use this when something happens at the worst moment. For example, my phone died right before the meeting. Bad timing. And seventh, trust me. Use this when you want someone to believe you. For example, "Trust me, I won't miss the bus again." And that's the story for today. If you understood the main idea, you're improving. If you caught some of the phrases, even better. And remember, English is not only grammar. English is stories, real life emotions, problems, and small conversations. My name is Ellie, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!